All right, we should be live. Testing audio. Audio is good. YouTube is live. Let's just go adjust that. Hello, everybody. Pop out the chat there. $5 from Grimlock. As always, thank you for your evergreen support, Grimlock. I appreciate you. Oh, I wonder if there's a way to connect Cash App to the thing that pops up, to the pop-up thing. Because that'd be really handy. All right. Why don't we get started? So. Yeah, we have some questions, or perhaps not questions, but asking for opinions, if you will. Sorry, just gotta get okay, yeah. Opinions on quantum computing. I don't have super strong opinions on it. Actually, one of the things that I plan on doing this summer is there's some like foundational papers on quantum computing and Riemannian geometry. And so I plan on reading some of those papers, or, well, yeah, a few of those papers this summer, so then I can potentially apply my own work to more quantum computing stuff, because that's very, very hot right now, and I need a job. So, um, so we'll see. Can you explain repulsive gravity? Well, so generally speaking, gravity in the world that we exist in is not repulsive. There are very few examples where it is. The expansion of space-time is in some sense repulsive. And then you can also get like repulsive gravitational effects when you have a spinning thing falling onto the axis of a spinning black hole. But beyond that, they're generally not repulsive things. Gravity is typically attractive. Are you taking guests? Eventually, yes, but not right now. What is your opinion on dark matter? I mean, it probably exists. It probably exists as some sort of mass density that we haven't detected yet. Whether it's particles or black holes or something else, that's a different story. Do we have a functional quantum computer? Yeah, we have plenty. Do you think quantum computers will give a boost to AI? Not really. They're like separate things. Quantum computers are only good at very, very specific tasks. What's your opinion about horizontal? Mm. My ex was in quantum computing, and I can easily get you hired in Oregon. Look, I'm looking for an academic job, so it's probably less easy to get hired, but I appreciate it. Are you done with religious topics? No. I just don't do debates on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. At least not typically. How are you doing? I'm okay. Why am I unemployed? Good question. Most valuable talented scientist in history? Uh, that's really broad. I mean, if we're talking about physicists, it might be Einstein or maybe Newton. But other than that, it's hard to say outside of just one field. Would you recommend any books for someone wanting to get into physics? Yes, actually, let me go get it, because I get this question a lot. If you're just interested in physics, especially like space and black holes and stuff, read this book. This book is like the best book ever written as like an introductory thing to people who want to learn about, you know, physics and cosmology and stuff. It's super readable. It was written by Stephen Hawking, who's like brilliant. Um, there are diagrams. Just read A Brief History of Time. Okay, everybody needs to read it. Um, what would be the next population type in ships? I don't know what that means. Are microwaved ionized gas jets possible in the future for atmospheric flight? I don't know what that question means. Yes, Newton, but why in your opinion is Newton greater than Einstein? I'm actually not sure if Newton's greater than Einstein. What is the definition of time as used in physics? Time is as typically just used in physics. It's just a parameter that describes the evolution of some process. Most influential physicists of all time believed in God. I mean, prior to the 20th century, that's absolutely true. Um, after the 20, or starting in the 20th century and beyond, it's just not really true anymore. Like, I mean, Albert Einstein didn't believe in God in any typical sense of the word. Stephen Hawking didn't believe in God. Roger Penrose doesn't believe in God. Um, Paul Dirac didn't believe in God. So like there are a lot of famous physicists who, like very influential physicists who just didn't. Um, in quantum scale is just in background, not a parameter. What? Newton invented calculus, law of motion, law of optics, hence greater than Einstein. It's debatable. Um, what do you think about engineering physics? I don't know a lot about it. How do we know that mathematics describes properties of material reality, not just perception? We don't. What are your thoughts on Leonard Susskind and his holographic principle? I think, well, so the holographic principle isn't just Lenny's, right? But the holographic principle is generally like really, it's really well justified. It's not proven, but it's really well justified. Stephen Diddler Hawking. Well, look, so Hawking was on a flight log to Epstein's Island. True. He was also paralyzed from the neck down at the time. And I think his face was mostly paralyzed at the time. So it's not like he could do anything, even if he wanted to. But also, keep in mind, Epstein also hosted like scientific events on his island. So it seems more plausible that like a fully paralyzed man was going to the island for scientific stuff, because Epstein liked scientists. He liked the perception of having scientists around him. Than like Hawking going to be like a creep, even though he was fully paralyzed and couldn't do anything anyway. So I don't know. It just seems less plausible to me. But look, you can have your beliefs if you want. Like if you want to judge a dead guy, that's fine. I don't really care. I don't care about his character. Ask a physicist on Tuesday. Yes, this is the Twilight Zone. Do you read philosophy? Not often. When did physics and math start clicking for you, and did you ever want to give it up? No. I've always had a good intuition for mathematics. So, if humans hadn't grown big brains, which animal would have grown to our current intellect? Maybe none of them. Are you still snitching on students? I don't think I ever snitched on students. How did God create Earth in only 7 days? Great, that's a question not for me. That's a question for somebody else. Why don't we use more nuclear? It seems like the best greatest option. It's really hard to build nuclear because there's a lot of red tape, and that red tape makes sense because you need to highly regulate it so it's safe. Tips for understanding and studying electromagnetics intuitively. You have to have a good intuition for integral calculus. You just have to. There's a channel called Dialect where the creator critiques GR. One of his videos is the fourth dimension in relativity isn't time, it's space. I haven't heard of it, no. I thought you were a social worker? No, I have a PhD in physics. I'm not a social worker. How does the Unruh effect imply that different observers can perceive different vacuum states, and what are the implications for quantum field theory and curved spacetime? Yeah, so the Unruh effect basically just means that particle number is not an observable. Particle number is not an invariant observable in all reference frames. Particle number changes depending on your reference frame. Very, very weird. And one of the implications is Hawking radiation. I mean, like, if you're you can kind of view Unruh radiation as like the kind of the relative version of Hawking radiation. So Unruh radiation is to special relativity as Hawking radiation is to general relativity, if that makes sense. So if you sit next to a black hole, it's like you're accelerating. And, you know, what the ontological implications are is a much different question. Do you think that quantum physics contradicts epistemology or human logic? No. How come there are smallest units like Planck length and zeptoseconds? Why can't they? Well, those aren't smallest units. Those are just like the Planck length is just the length scale at which we expect space-time to start to behave quantumly. That's it. If the universe is expanding, where does energy come from to expand? It doesn't. In an expanding universe, the energy is not conserved, which is a tough pill to swallow, but it's true. You just finished all your A-level exams today. Congrats. How do I get cracked at physics intuition? Practice. Do you know your IQ? I don't. Okay, miss. Without Newton's established work, Einstein couldn't give us his contribution. Sure, that's true. But on the other hand, what Einstein did was harder, insofar as like the stuff that he had to do was more sophisticated than the stuff that Newton had to do. So, you know, it kind of goes both ways, right? Bro got a summer internship in an NRM research group here at university. I cannot picture coherence. You mean NMR? Mathematical physicist, not a physicist. Mathematical physicist is a type of physicist. It's like a modifier. There's theoretical physicist, experimental physicist, applied physicist, mathematical physicist, right? What is your viewpoint on determinism? I'm a determinist. How much I would rather do physics than orgochem. I've never took orgochem. Student snitcher? Are you a teacher? Not right now, no. Should I go for my doctor or stick with just your master's? If you're in physics and you want to do research, then you need a PhD. Do you think I should study physics or math? Both. Do both. You are lying. About what? How does the James Webb Telescope picture change our perception of the Big Bang Theory? It doesn't really. That's not... It's changing our view on how galaxies form, but that doesn't really have much to do with the Big Bang. Good book recommendations on physics for a complete novice. This one. Read this book. This book. Read it. Are you next celebrity like Neil deGrasse Tyson? I don't know. I'd hope that I would keep being a scientist. Can you explain what a Hilbert space? You mean a Hilbert space? A Hilbert space is an abstract mathematical space where wave functions live. So you can think of like kind of like the space of all possible quantum wave functions that lives in a Hilbert space. Can gravity manipulation be used to time travel? Not really. At least like you could travel forward in time, I guess. You would need some very, very strange matter to be able to travel backward in time with gravity. I thought we were doing a paper. Not today, no. I couldn't find any papers to do today. I looked through my repository and I didn't see anything. How to get careers in research? Be a good researcher, I guess. It's hard. It's really hard. Did I miss the super chat? No, I didn't. Okay. If the are you live on multiple streaming platforms? Yes, TikTok and YouTube. How possible would it be for frozen ice to be found on the bottom of the ocean? It depends on what the pressure is at the bottom of the ocean. I don't think the pressure gets high enough to have denser forms of ice down there. So I don't know. It doesn't seem... It does, but like I'd have to know the details. What's your opinion on superdeterminism? I don't like it. But hit a metal object with an infrared laser, it causes propulsion when the ion separates and rejoins. What do you think would happen if you use quartz to reflect the IR laser instead of metal? So metals tend to have freer electrons than minerals, non-metal minerals do. So I imagine that you'd have a harder time. So if energy is not conserved at the universe level, since there's no time symmetry, so it means energy can be created, but how? It's just a number. It's not a thing being created, right? Sorry, I'm going to catch up on you on TikTok. Thank you for the glasses CIA link, by the way. I appreciate you. How old are photons used for the double slit experiment? Well, often they're just created brand new. Were you born with a fast brain or did you train it? Who knows? I don't know how any of that works. I'm not a neuroscientist. Just a quick question. Why isn't there a formula for the weight of electrons? Because as far as we can tell, it's not a derived concept. It's something that pops out of, it's just a property of the thing. What's the best argument for God in your opinion? I mean, if you wanted to make an argument that would like convince a normie, probably like a teleological argument is my guess. Is philosophy and things like global warming an important part of physics? Well, global warming uses physics. Philosophy can be relevant for physics, but no, they're just interests that I have. Did you have a specific concentration area of physics when you studied? Yeah, I was doing like relativity, basically. Mathematics is not a natural science, it's theoretical. Yes, mathematical physics is a type of physics, though. I mean, you just seem upset that I have a title and you don't, but that's cool. Saint Nick is a well-known troll, everybody. Do you think it's worth it to do a PhD in pure math? Yeah, sure. Do you believe in higher dimensions like fifth and sixth? We don't have any evidence for them, no. Are you researching physics right now? Well, right now I'm live, but after my live stream, yeah, I have some stuff to do. Wouldn't black holes be bright whenever they're eating? Not necessarily. They only get bright when things falling into them get really, really hot. What's your name and date of birth? I am not telling. $1 from Christopher Siebert. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Did we land on the moon? Yeah, of course. Why does gravity manifest at the speed of light? That's just the speed at which non-massive things propagate. So in that case, gravity itself doesn't have mass. At least we don't have good reason to think so. So it would propagate at the speed of light. If the universe expands faster than the speed of light, how does the light reach us? Well, the light from the things that are that are sufficiently far away from us so that the universe is growing faster than the speed of light, that light doesn't reach us. But there's stuff that's closer, and that stuff isn't expanding away from us at the speed of light. What's your opinion on divisions like hard and soft sciences? Is it a useful distinction? Can be. Do you think it's worth it to do a PhD? Okay, I already answered that. When are you going to on YouTube episode 1 Physicist versus 21 Science Deniers? That would be a delight, honestly. How long is my hair? It's pretty long. Can you do the Cavendish experiment in a vacuum? Well, personally, I can't. I don't have the equipment. But yes, it can be done. Yeah. All right, I'm going to catch up on... you should do a collab with Professor Dave. It doesn't seem like Professor Dave does a lot of collabs. So, like, I've reached out to him before, and he, you know, offered a collab, but he wasn't for, like, a collab debate, but he wasn't interested. Which is fine. Like, he doesn't have to. He wasn't rude about it. It was mostly, I'm like, hey, if you want to team up and debate some flat earthers, we can. And he's like, I don't really do those anymore. All right, let's read some YouTube comments. By the way, if you want your question definitely answered and you're on YouTube, a super chat is a good way to make sure that it catches my attention. If electrons flow, or the question is more theoretical, if you could guess as to what, if any, degeneracy pressure exists beyond neutron degeneracy, what would it be, and do you think it could solve the singularity? Potentially there could be such thing, but I have no idea what it would be. If electrons flow from negative to positive, then why does the resistor not work if I connect it before LED from the negative? I don't understand the question. The resistor works regardless of whether you put it before or after the LED. What's your thoughts on the universe being inside a supermassive black hole? I'm not super convinced of it, but some people are. How did dead atoms become living organisms themselves? Well, the atoms are dead, but atoms do chemistry, right? And so if life is just complicated chemistry, then it seems like you could have atoms that do chemistry, right? What is a photon and what does it do and or work like? Also, why would subatomic particles look like? What would subatomic particles look like interacting with each other? So a photon is just the smallest chunk of light that you can have. Matt, thank you for the rainbow mini star. I appreciate you. A photon is just the smallest particle of light. It's the smallest possible like chunk of light that you can have. So in a sense, it is just light. It just does what light does. It just happens to come in chunks. You can't cut them in half. And what would subatomic particles look like when interacting with each other? They're too small to even think about what they would look like. They don't look like anything. Can you explain the Andromeda paradox? I do have a video on this from a while ago. So you should go watch that. But essentially, it's a result of relativity of simultaneity. So if you and I are moving with respect to each other, the slices of space-time, so if time goes up and space goes sideways, the slices of space-time will be tilted relative to each other that we consider now. Is there any merit to vortex math toroidal graphing? No. Which one do you think is unfinished? Quantum mechanics or general relativity? I don't know. I want to say it's relativity, but it could be wrong. All right, let's catch up on YouTube. Oh, we got a super chat from What's the Matter 7 with $2. Could strings be causes for particle spin? Yeah, so in string theory, the particle spin comes out of the way that the strings behave. That's definitely a thing. How are light photons created when using the flashlight? So photons aren't like conserved, and so whenever you have an electron moving around wildly, it'll just spit out photons willy-nilly. Thoughts on quantum computing? It's neat. Does relativity imply everything with mass bend spacetime, like a human, for example? Yeah. Natural versus social sciences rather than hard versus soft is totally fair. What is nuclear cusp? I'm not familiar with that, so I don't know. What are your thoughts on time travel? To the future is possible, to the past is not. At least it doesn't seem that way. If all matter is contained in the universe and it is expanding, is there then nothing beyond? There is no beyond the universe. The universe is defined to be everything. But it's not, and I wrote a script this morning for a video that I'm going to post tomorrow, but the universe is not like surrounded by emptiness, right? The universe is everything. There's no space outside the universe. How would you diagnose and change a flat tire? Well, I guess I could diagnose a flat tire by looking at the air pressure in the tire. Or if you can find the hole, then you can find the hole. And then change a flat tire. I've never had to do that. That is a skill I don't have. I should have it, though. Nectu with the $2. Can you explain negative temperatures below absolute zero? Yeah, I have a video on this from a while ago. But the basic gist is that the way that we define temperature is the rate it's inversely related to the rate at which entropy changes when you add or subtract energy from the system. So if the entropy only changes a little bit, if the entropy only increases a little bit when you add a lot of energy, then that means that you're at a very high temperature. Because that means that if you're at a high temperature, then you're already have such high entropy that adding energy will only change the entropy a little bit. Now, negative temperature would mean that when you add energy, you decrease the entropy. And that can happen when you have a system, when you have a finite quantum system, meaning you have a finite, like a maximum energy state. And if you have most of your particles in near the maximum energy state, and then you add a little bit of energy, they will, even more of them will be closer to the maximal energy state, in which case the entropy will go down because you'll have more particles in the same state. And so because the entropy goes down when you add energy, that would mean it must have negative temperature. And what's the matter 7 with the $2 again? If strings are a variable, then why are we so confused? Well, the thing is we don't know if string theory is true, right? That's the business, right? What's your opinion on JWST finding galaxies further out than previously thought possible? Well, it means that we have to reconsider how we think about galaxy formation, which is a cool thing that you can do. I'm Salvi with the 200 Argentinian pesos, I think. Hi, how's your day going? I'm doing okay. Thanks for asking. Oh, and $5 from Hard Work. What's your personal opinion on ADS CFT correspondence? I think it's brilliant, and I think it's probably true, but I don't know if it applies to our universe. Why do you believe in the moon landing? What's the evidence? Yeah, so the bet, I mean, like, honestly, we have like an overwhelming amount of evidence, right? Like, we have photos, we have videos, we have testimony, we have samples, we left stuff on the moon. But, like, there's a really compelling piece of evidence from the 1972 Apollo 16 moon landing when they were driving around on their little lunar buggy. Namely, you can just examine the footage that we have. That footage exists. It's available on YouTube. And you can just examine it frame by frame and trace out the trajectory that the dust that's kicked up by the lunar rover makes. And it turns out that the rate at which it falls is slower than what gravity says it should fall if it was filmed on Earth. And the speed at which it moves horizontally is consistent with taking place in a vacuum. So the point is that we have evidence that says that that the place where the lunar rover was filmed had lower gravity and took place in a vacuum. That sounds like the moon to me. From $5 from Jorge Cabrera, what are your thoughts on Starlight, a non-ablative ceramics capable of allegedly withstanding around 10,000 degrees made from simple household items? I've never heard of it. I have no idea. I can't comment on it, which is I feel bad about, but like I've never heard of it. But it looked like a tiny remote controlled car. You can literally see the dude driving it moving. So like, I don't know what you're talking about. You can literally see him steering. How badly do you want to shake a person who misconstrues the observer effect? I don't want to shake them. I just feel bad. What's the matter 7 again with the $2? If block theory, why asymmetrical memory? That just might have to do with entropy. There was no steering wheel. Literally his hands are holding controls. The rooster tail, right. And so if it was a tiny remote controlled car, then the friction wouldn't work to keep the thing in place. Like, I've done the math on this. I made a video about, or did I do a video about it? Yeah, I think I did a video about it a while ago. But the point is you can analyze, like, what if it was actually shrunk down and sped up so that it looked like it was moving faster, blah, 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 the gravity. So they faked the gravity and then they put it in a giant vacuum chamber, whatever. It still doesn't work. Do numerical eigenvalues rise linearly when space-time curvature takes place in QFT? Numerical eigenvalues of what? Could large voids like Boat's void be driven by a large rip in space? Well, I don't know what a rip in space would be. Like, we kind of define space as like it's like a thing called like a smooth manifold or a differentiable manifold, and we don't have the language to talk about like rips in space, rips in that manifold, right? When did you decide to keep growing your hair out? I don't know. I was like in 7th grade or something. Is gravity considered energy? Kind of, but not really. Can you explain what supergravity is? Not well. So I'm not going to try. Why is gravity a theory, not a proven fact? I mean, it's both. A theory is an explanation. And it's a fact that there is this observed phenomena that's called gravity. The theory of gravity is just how we explain what gravity is, what the observed phenomena of gravity is. How much energy would be needed for the lunar module and crew to escape the gravity of the moon? Not much. The moon's gravity is significantly weaker, and there's not an atmosphere to push through. Did Han shoot first? I guess. I don't know. I'm not a huge Star Wars fan. What do you think about mixing sawdust, charcoal, and wood chips? I don't know anything about any of those. Is it true that speed of light is not ever real because of spontaneous creation of antimatter? I don't know what you mean by not ever real. Like, it's a constant that shows up in equations. How do photons have energy if they have no mass? Well, I mean, despite it being counterintuitive, mass and energy are not necessarily the same thing. The full Einstein equation, E equals mc squared, is not the full equation. You're missing another term which involves some momentum, and photons have momentum but no mass, so they still have energy. And from What's the Matter 7 again with the $2, this is a great way to support the live stream, by the way. I respect block, but it seems like regress doge. I don't know what's being said here, but the block universe is kind of what you get out of general relativity. So it's not like a cop-out thing. It's like what the mathematics of the physical theory that we use seems to imply. Can you explain CP violation? Yeah, so CP stands for charge parity. And so when we say that there is charge parity violation, what we mean is that there is like this supposed symmetry, namely that if you change all of the charges of a particle into their negatives, and if you flip all the lefts to rights and rights to lefts, that would be a charge parity symmetry transformation. And the idea is that you might think that if you do all of that, all of the physics would stay the same. Like you would get the exact same measurements, for example, if you changed all of the charges in all of your detectors and all the charges and all of the things you're experimenting on, all these things. But it turns out the weak nuclear force doesn't respect that symmetry. All of the others do, the weak nuclear force does not. Do you know how to do the math for explosion lensing? No, but I know it's really complicated, and it seems really cool. How does physics tie into evolutionary consciousness on a micro level? I don't know if it does. Is the speed of light constant if it can slow down? Recent experiment brought it to a standstill. So the speed of light in a vacuum is constant. That's the claim. How many types of mesons have we discovered until today? There are a lot of mesons, and at one point I was keeping track of them, but I don't remember all of them anymore. There's kaons, there's pions, there's all of the particle antiparticle one. Like I just don't keep track. There's a lot though. What A levels will I need for aerospace engineering? I don't know. I don't live in the UK. Can you explain the no communication theorem? I do have a video on this, so there'd be a better explanation there. But essentially, I mean, the actual derivation of the theorem is a little bit complicated. But essentially, the idea is that if you have two people separated with entangled particles between them, there's nothing that person A can do to communicate information to person B using those entangled particles without also communicating sublight. What's the Matter 7 with the $2? Agree to disagree. A theory is what we experience. I mean, like, okay. It just doesn't agree with relativity, but still maintain CPT. Yes, the weak nuclear force does maintain CPT symmetry. That's true. What field of physics do you cover so I know what to ask? So I do mostly relativity, cosmology, black hole stuff, a little bit of quantum gravity here and there, a little bit of quantum field theory. And then I also do mathematics as well, like differential geometry. Will polariton lasers replace semiconductor lasers? I haven't read about polariton lasers, but that sounds cool. Is determinism compatible with quantum theory? Yes, as long as you take a deterministic, non-collapse based interpretation of quantum mechanics, yeah. What's the wackiest unit of measurement you've ever seen? A smoot. Someone studying physics told me that on very tiny scale, you have particles that create spontaneously, preventing real void from existing, thus speed of light is never reach. No, that's not true. So those are virtual particles, and virtual particles aren't real. They're not a real thing. They're a mathematical trick. I'm not sure how PhDs work, but did you have a specific thesis? If so, what on? Yeah, I did. My thesis was on conformal hypersurface geometry. Are we built as beings for Earth's gravity? Yeah, sure. Can you differentiate from first principles? You mean take the derivative? Yeah. I guess it depends on how first principles you're talking. If you're talking about like building like a metric spaces up from like set theory, that's a little bit more complicated. Are you a fan of social sciences? I mean, I don't know who Max Weber is. I don't think like social sciences are bad or anything though. Oh, we have another question. Oh no, never mind. This person we can mute. Were you able to view the Borealis before coming back to the US? No. I'm so bummed. I haven't been able to see the Borealis yet at all, which is really a bummer. I wish I could. I'll have to see it at some point later in my life, I guess. Based on physics, is God real? I mean, so physics doesn't require God in order to make sense, but it doesn't answer the question as a whole. When are electrons not classed and ineligible? I don't know what that means. Long question. If a photon can be both a particle and wave, could the photon have mass? Hold on, let me read the rest of the question. Oh, it's not done. Well, photons don't have mass, no. Even though they're a particle and wave. But they're not really a particle, they're just localized waves. Conformal hypersurface, not hypospadias. Is it possible to escape the event horizon of a black hole with a warp bubble? Yes, but you have to go slower than light, actually, which is interesting. What's your opinion on the wave-particle duality and why? It's not a duality. It's all waves. It's waves the whole way down. What's the matter of 7 with the $2 again asks, light speed and Cherenkov radiation, how's it work? Yeah, so Cherenkov radiation... So think about like sound waves, right? If you are moving through the air, you produce sound waves. If you're like wiggling around in air, you're producing sound waves, even though they're quiet. And if you wave your hand really fast, you can maybe even hear it. If you move fast enough, you produce a sonic boom, right? If you move faster than the speed of sound, then you leave behind a wake, and that wake basically is a bunching up of air molecules. That's a sonic boom. When you have a charged particle moving through a medium, or a particle with an electromagnetic moment of some kind, it can't be just something that's purely neutral. But if you have something that's moving through a medium, like an electron, say, faster than the speed of light in that medium, then it'll leave behind a wake, and that's what Cherenkov radiation is. How do I get my question verified? It's not so on YouTube you can give super chats, and on super chats, and obviously I'm going to prioritize super chat questions because they're giving me money to answer their question. All right, let's bring up a guest. I know that I have a very special guest who's wanted to come up and ask a question for forever, so I shall bring up Ethan. Ethan, what you got for me, bud?
It's finally time.
It's finally time. All right, mini super space. What you got?
Yeah. So, what is the main issue with them? It sounds like a simple enough approach. You're just, if I'm getting it wrong, please tell me. It sounds like you're just cutting off the larger modes that would be, go up to infinity because they're larger than the universe. Why does that make it too simple when you reduce it down to a mini super space?
So the tip, so maybe we're talking about different things. When I'm thinking about mini super spaces, those are just FRW metrics where the only degree of freedom is the scalar expansion, and that's it. And that you can quantize. You can plug that into the Wheeler-DeWitt equation. But yeah, that's what I'm thinking of when you say mini super space models. Maybe you're thinking of something else, or maybe you're thinking about a specific application of those.
Probably don't want to do it during the live, but I'll have to pull up the paper. It was mostly just talking about how they just cut off any mode that would be larger than the observable universe. And
yeah, so we might be talking about different things. Maybe like post the paper on the Discord or something, and I'll take a look at it later.
Yeah, sure thing. But you mentioned that it often simplifies things too much. Have there been any models that use mini superspaces that have made accurate, predictions or experimental predictions?
Well, so again, when I'm thinking of mini superspace models, I'm thinking of just those models where the only degree of freedom is the expansion scalar in the FRW metric. So this is like the scale factor, right? And it's like a 1 degree of freedom theory. It's not even like a field theory. It's just a quantum mechanics. It's a 0 plus 1 dimensional theory.
Okay. So that's what you mean by toy model.
Yeah. So it's a super simplified toy model. However, the lambda CDM is a mini superspace model, right? So in that sense, I mean, yeah, sure, definitely useful, but it's hard to talk about like what's actually happening at like a quantum scale using a mini superspace model because it basically smooths out everything so that there's only 1 degree of freedom.
Oh, neat. Okay. Yeah, I'll definitely pull up that paper and I'll post it on Discord. Thanks.
Okay, I'll take a look.
It's if I may, the canonical quantization of gravity, it seemed like a good approach, but it leads to loop quantum gravity, which has its own problems. Does that tell us anything? Does the failure of that approach tell us anything about gravity specifically?
Maybe. I mean, there's some people would argue with you when you say that loop quantum gravity has its own problems. So some people would argue actually loop quantum gravity works great. It's like I am very agnostic about, or I'm very skeptical of anybody saying that this is the approach to quantum gravity because we just haven't seen something that actually works with flying colors. That's all. So maybe it does imply that like the canonical quantization method is like kind of going down the wrong rabbit hole. Or maybe it actually does work and they just have some issues to work out. I can't make any definitive statements though.
Okay, cool. And then the last one I had was this could be complete bias from the type of papers I'm looking into, but they almost always seem to, in conclusion, this satisfies the Wheeler-DeWitt equation. Is that just like the bias of the papers I'm looking into, or is that equation really like, I guess, that active in
So
quantum cosmology?
if you're doing quantum cosmology, the Wheeler-DeWitt, if so, there's kind of this expectation that whatever the field of whatever the theory of quantum gravity is, it seems like the Wheeler-DeWitt equation should be involved. So like if you do something and then it just completely disagrees with the Wheeler-DeWitt equation, generally there's this view that like you've done something wrong. Especially in quantum cosmology stuff. So I mean, yeah, there's definitely like kind of this view that like the Wheeler-DeWitt equation is like it might not be like true, but it definitely is. I shouldn't say it might not be true. It might not be like the way to do quantum gravity, but it definitely should be true. At least that's kind of like the view. Now, whether that's true or not is a different question. But it's basically, if you're trying to make a connection with something actually, if you're trying to take your model and have it make a connection with something that's like, generally agreed upon, you want it to agree with general relativity. And if it's a quantum model, the only thing that we have that can agree with general relativity and as a quantum model is the Wheeler-DeWitt. So like that's kind of like the thing that people will grab onto.
Would you put money on saying if somebody's theory doesn't agree with Wheeler-DeWitt, it's wrong?
Probably, yeah.
That's great to know. Okay, I'm definitely going to pull up that paper and figure out where the difference between that mini superspace is and just the simplified metric you were talking about. But yeah, thanks for having me up.
Of course, as always.
CD.
All right, we do have some super chats. We have another super chat from What's the Matter 7 with the $2. Thank you. Again, I do appreciate you. Like, we disagree, but I do appreciate you. So after redshift, is the object still there forever? Yeah, it should be. It doesn't just disappear. If you're asking about photons, a photon might, or a wave packet might redshift away so that its wavelength is longer than the observable universe. Then the question is that photon still there, or is it just part of the background electromagnetic field? That's like a philosophical question, kind of. All right, I'm going to catch up on TikTok and then answer some questions from YouTube. Can you tell us your thoughts on quantum entanglement? It's real. It's been measured all the time. From 1 to 10, how much do geometry I need to become an astrophysicist? Depends on what kind you are, but most of the time 0, basically. What's the main difference between string theory and loop quantum gravity and approaching quantum gravity? They have just completely different ontologies. So loop quantum gravity is basically just doing normal quantum field theory for gravity in a clever way. String theory is saying, no, actually, field theory is wrong the whole way down. You need something completely different. And that's where the strings come in. I thought this was Wednesday. Yes, but I couldn't think of any papers to go over today, so we're doing this today. Discord link in the bio. Yes. What do you think about an oscillating universe? It seems at least like a priori plausible, and it depends on what you mean by oscillating. Like there are definitely some models that exist of oscillating universes, but they're not stable, or at least we don't know if they're stable. I'm actually working on one that's supposed to be stable, so stay tuned. What do you think about Neil deGrasse Tyson? Seems like a nice man, but quite close-minded. So I would actually kind of go with the opposite. He seems pretty open-minded. He seems to be like open to learning new things from like experts. However, there are like allegations against him. I don't want to spread anything. Like I don't know if they're true or not, but there are allegations against him of like, misconduct. And I don't know how he is as a person. So I don't know. I've never met him, so I can't really comment on him as a person. What kind of science is using vibration to move objects? Well, they're not really using vibration, but there are like engineers who are using like sound to move things around, to like levitate things. That's a thing. Why exotic nucleuses exist? How quadra and pentaquark nucleuses happen? Well, those aren't nuclei. Those are hadrons. But they happen basically because, I mean, apparently you can have stable configurations of quarks in 4 or 5 particle arrangements, right? And the question is what exactly are those? My understanding is, oh, yes, I do have a Cash App. Did I get a Cash App notification? Oh, I did get a Cash App. I'm sorry, I missed it. I need to pay better attention. Guinness Shepherd with the $10. Ramen or mac and cheese? Um, Ramen or mac and cheese? Ramen. Definitely ramen. Yeah, I need to set up a Cash App notification thing, so that it sends it to me on here, because otherwise I won't see it on my phone. How does the information paradox challenge our understanding of black hole thermodynamics? It means they're very weird, but the information paradox seems kind of like it's resolved at this point. At least if you accept quantum, like there's the page curve and there's Hawking radiation. If you combine all those ideas, you kind of get a resolution. So what is the problem with bosonic string theory in comparison to superstring? Yeah, so bosonic string theory doesn't have fermions in it, and our universe has fermions in it, so it can't be a theory for a universe. Why is science opposed to religion and tries to disprove it and opposed to its morality? It's not. Wanted to ask you about a study from New Zealand regarding dark matter energy not existing. I haven't seen it, so I can't really comment. Let's answer a question from YouTube. What would it take for me to be the only one on Earth? Science? No. I don't know what you mean by the only one on Earth. What's best for gamma shielding in space? So most practical would just be tons and tons of water, because we have lots of water. But most efficient would just be like tungsten or something, or osmium. Just lots of stuff, basically. Lots of stuff in the way between you and the gamma radiation. How urgent is physics to our current landscape? Well, physics isn't really urgent, although maybe you could argue that like nuclear physics with regards to fusion is. Are toroidal structures found anywhere in quantum physics? Not really, at least not like intrinsically. Is there a tiny chance that all matter in the universe suddenly disintegrates into pure energy? No. I mean, energy is not a substance. You have to remember that energy is not like a thing. Energy is a property of systems. So it doesn't really make sense to even ask the question. Are there any physics concepts that you wish you could see in sci-fi media? No, they actually do a pretty good job generally of like talking about interesting things. How urgent? Oh, I already answered that. What jobs can you do with a physics degree? Well, you could go work in industry, or you can go be a physicist. Science tries to oppose religious ethics now, which has made every civilization successful. How does science try to oppose religious ethics? I don't see that. Is vacuum decay real, and is it as scary as it sounds? It might be real. The data is like, the jury is out on whether it's a real thing, whether it really happens in our universe. It's not clear at all. Like we're so close. We're like right on the brink of it being possible versus not possible. So it's really not sure. And is it worth worrying about? No, absolutely not. Because if it did happen, you wouldn't even notice it happening. How would you advise somebody who wants to enter astrophysics? Read this book. Read this book first. This is the first book you should read. Are you sure? Are you 100% sure Neil Armstrong walked on the moon? Yeah. Well, okay. I'm as sure as I am that like that there's a pharmacy down the street, right? What's your insight about two-state vector formalism by Aharonov and collaborators? I haven't read it, so I don't have an insight about it. Isn't technology fusing with ideas or physics principles in quantum computing? Yeah, I guess. Yeah. Is energy purely a concept made to understand how systems work? Yeah, in a sense. Can you explain conservation laws or just Noether shortly? Yeah, so essentially, and this just falls out from the math. If you have a symmetry, if you have a symmetry of a system, in this case it's the Lagrangian of a system. If you have a symmetry of the Lagrangian, meaning if you change the Lagrangian in a way that doesn't actually change the features of the system, then like the behavior of the system, then that means that there's just some number or some quantity that's associated with that symmetry. That's the basic gist. And you can just derive this from the Euler-Lagrange equations from, you can just derive Noether's theorem from the Euler-Lagrange equations for any Lagrangian that obeys a symmetry. I'm a mathematician, I love physics. Cool. Is string theory a scam? No, definitely not. Anybody who's telling you that is just salty. Oh, he's not even reading chat. I am reading chat. How do you feel about an eternal universe? I kind of lean that way, but I'm just not sure about it. Thoughts on Neil deGrasse Tyson? I don't know him personally, so I can't have thoughts on that regard, but he does a great job doing science communication. Can you explain false vacuum decay simply? Yeah, think of it this way. Think that like you're in a hilly valley, and like you put a ball in one of the valleys, like between two of the hills, but there's like a deeper valley somewhere else. You could imagine that like the ball could roll over a hill and then end up lower. But if it's a quantum system, it actually could just tunnel through the hill without needing the energy to roll over the hill, and that can happen. So that's the idea of false vacuum decay. Our universe might be in like the not so low valley, and it could tunnel to a lower valley with regards to the Higgs mechanism, and that would be bad. Do you do magic mentalism? No, I don't. And I've never heard of Darren Brown. No. Is anyone filtering this chat for you? No. From Chessbutt with the $20. Thank you so much, Chessbutt. Reading a little book by Carlo Rovelli, and he said something I've never heard. A black hole is a rebounding star seen in extreme slow motion. Is this only in the context of loop quantum gravity? Or am I misunderstanding something? So that is referring to a gravistar, which is a really neat idea, and it does come from loop quantum gravity, definitely. But the idea is, yeah, I mean, it does come from loop quantum gravity. The idea is that, like, in some sense, like, there's time dilation that's causing it to appear to slow down that appears to collapse very, very slowly, more and more slowly as it's, collapsing in. And then at some point, it will rebound and explode again. And the reason why it rebounds is because of, loop quantum gravity reasons, basically. And so we're just seeing it in slow motion because of the time dilation inside a black hole. But yeah, I mean, that's the basic gist, and it does come from loop quantum gravity. But there are other models that will have rebounds as well. What's the matter, 7, with the $2? Dumb question, but do neutrinos go through us? Yeah, so many, like trillions. Bro, I got 2 days till my physics 1, my test. What do I do? Study. Why are you here? Study. Yeah. The book is A Brief History of Time by Stephen Hawking. Right. Very good book. Very, very, very good book. Everybody should read it. It's not so accurate anymore because it was written in the the 80s and then redone in the 90s, but like the actual like almost everything is still good, and it's like he does a really good job explaining things. Why does the path integral formulation of quantum mechanics require complex numbers? Well, it doesn't. You could do everything with matrices if you wanted to, but that's equivalent to complex numbers, and it just turns out that the real numbers are not enough to describe everything. Do you think AI mixed with quantum computer will try to become a god? Why would AI mix with quantum computing? Any guesses on why there was inequality in matter and antimatter ratio in the Big Bang? No guesses. No idea why. Can you explain delayed coordinates for me, how they work, this Lorentz attractor thingy? You'd have to give me more details. What philosophical questions in physics interest you the most? Where everything, like why there's stuff here. Stinky Ethian. So an FRW model with just scale factors, one type of mini superspace. That's when I hear the phrase mini superspace, that's what I think of. I've never heard of other forms. But again, like I've only used them a few times in my research, so like I'm not like a mini superspace expert. But they are like in that context where it's just an FRW model with the scale factor. That's a really, really easy and simple model to study cosmology, to study quantum cosmology. Is the Andromeda thought experiment valid? Yes, but it's probably being misunderstood. The idea is just that when I'm moving relative to you, we might both have the same now locally, but like if you take a time slice, like if time runs up and space runs horizontally, my now might be a horizontal line, and if you're moving relative to me, your now might be a slightly tilted relative to mine. And so very, very far away, our nows will differ by a lot. Why does Einstein's theory of special relativity with light moves at c and the common simplification medium slows down light contradict each other? They don't. Einstein's relativity is that light moves at the speed of light in a vacuum, always. It's if you measure the speed of light in a vacuum, you'll always get c. That's the idea. Are you into movies? Did you watch Black Holes, The Edge of All We Know? I didn't watch it, no. And like, am I into movies? I mean, I watch movies. I don't know if I'm into them, though. Thoughts on Penrose universe? Which one? Is the Big Bang just a singularity of time-space? No. The Big Bang doesn't necessarily say anything about a singularity. If the understanding of science is never concrete, why should we supersede religious ethics for it? Who ever made the claim that you should supersede religious ethics for science? Nobody ever made that claim. Why is the universe bigger than the speed of light? That's like asking, why is a football field bigger than, the speed of sound? It's not really a comparison that you can make. If you're interested in quantum communications, have a look at my GitHub. I'm not, really. Any guesses on why they're... Okay, I already answered that. Is it impossible to measure star distances with triangles? No, we do it all the time, actually. That's like how we measure star distances. At least the nearest ones. We use something called parallax, which is just triangles. Step us through Schrodinger's equation, why it's important, and how it practically applied. So Schrodinger's equation basically relates two things. So you have a quantity called a wave function. This is a quantity that in some sense describes the state of a quantum system at any moment in time. And that quantity, the rate at which it changes, is in some sense related to the total energy of the system, or to the energy that the system is in, or that the system has. And so that's what the Schrodinger equation is. It tells you that the rate of change of the wave function is related to the energy of the wave function. Now, this is super useful because oftentimes in physics, the way that we talk about things is we know how a thing is now. What is it like later? And if you know how a thing changes, then you can figure out what it's like later. So this means that we can use it to figure out things like how electrons behave around atoms. And in fact, this is the one of the first things that you learn to use it for is to study the behavior of electrons in hydrogen, or the behavior of the electron around in the hydrogen atom. And this can be used to predict like the spectrum of a hydrogen atom, which is roughly like what kind of light hydrogen absorbs, what kind of light it reflects, and what kind of light transmits through it, and so on and so forth. And it's basically important because it's the foundation of all quantum mechanics. Have you heard of light cones of consciousness? No, it sounds like woo-woo. What are your thoughts on our universe being a simulation? I don't think it is. Could cheese make it through a black hole? No. But maybe the cheese data could. What got you into physics? Turns out it was black holes. Ken suggest me a book for physics for astrophysics for Olympiad. I've never done the Olympiad, so I can't comment. Did you hear about turning light into a supersolid? They didn't do that, but I made a video on it debunking it a while ago. So go check that out. It'll be easily findable on TikTok. I don't know where it is on YouTube. Do you give lectures? I used to when I was in grad school. I haven't for a few years because I was in a purely research position. Penrose's conformal cyclic cosmology. I really like the idea. Mathematically, it's super elegant. Physically, it's probably wrong. Who did you vote for in the 2024 elections? I didn't. For technical reasons, I couldn't. How does uranium enrichment for nuclear weaponry work? So uranium has a few different isotopes, but uranium-235 and uranium-238 are the relevant ones. And uranium-238 is just slightly heavier. And uranium-235 is the kind that you want for nuclear weaponry or for, nuclear power plants. So all you do is you just put them in a centrifuge and spin it up really fast. And eventually you'll have the uranium-238 at the bottom and the uranium-238 slightly above it, because the you'll have the 235 at the top and the 238 at the bottom, because the 238 is heavier. Could really, really, really big cheese make it through a black hole? No, but it might become a black hole. Mike Levin is not woo-woo. Well, light cones of consciousness sounds like that. Maybe you just named it poorly. Is it possible that the universe is a kind of brain? I mean, I guess we could all be like in the brain of like whatever, but it just doesn't, like, we don't have any evidence for that. I knew once but forget. Why does regular star fusion stop at iron? Yeah, this is a good question. Essentially, there are two ways to get energy from nuclear reactions. You can either combine nuclei, and then because they bind together so tightly, they release energy. That would be like an exothermic reaction. Or you can split nuclei, meaning that they're so unstable that they release energy when they break apart. And it turns out that you can't have both of these in both cases, because otherwise you could split and then recombine and then split and then recombine and you'd get infinite energy. So what happens is that the lighter elements, when you fuse them, you get energy out. And the heavier elements, when you split them, you get energy out. And that midpoint where it turns over is that iron. And stars, being fusion machines, only fuse things up until the point where they stop producing energy. If they don't produce energy, then it's not energetically efficient for them to fuse them, and so they kind of just collapse. Like they no longer are able to fuse them to create energy to, like, sustain themselves, because fusing them would cost energy rather than creating energy. And so they fuse all the way up until it gets to iron, and then it stops. Why does the Earth spin? Well, the Earth spins because the solar system was spinning when it first formed. If man came from dirt, then why is there still dirt? Good question. Is it possible the universe is spinning instead of expanding? Not really, no. It doesn't look like it's spinning. It looks like it's expanding. And there's not really a way that you could have a spinning universe that looks like it's expanding. Can you explain the different disciplines of quantum physics real quick? Because I don't understand how they're distinguished. There aren't really different disciplines. I guess I don't really know what you mean. Stupid question. How is Earth not heavier than the sun, since the sun is only hydrogen and helium? The Earth is denser than the sun. We could just look at the density of the sun, and it's fairly So the density of the sun, actually, I think even the core of the sun is like about as dense as a human. The Earth is definitely denser than the sun, but there's just a lot more sun than Earth, so it's heavier. Opinion on the fine-tuning problem? I'm hesitant to even think it's a problem, actually. What do you think about us being in a black hole? I'm not convinced by it. How long before we have access to quantum computers? You might never have access, because they might remain specialized instruments forever. But who knows? Could there be an alternative dimension where your top... No. Grimlock with the $5. Have you heard of ball lightning? If so, I was curious on your thoughts. I have. I haven't read about it too much. I know it's like one of these things that's like supposed to be super, super rare, and people are like, oh, we don't know how to explain it. But there are a lot of weird atmospheric phenomena. So if there is such an atmospheric phenomenon known as ball lightning, it just seems like another example of one of these weird things. Do you think internal inflation is more likely than not? I'm not convinced either way. I'm kind of agnostic on it. Thoughts on virtual particles? Well, they're not real. Is ionizing radiation good or bad? Generally, ionizing radiation is not good for you. Space equals fictional? No, space is real. In fact, you live in space. We're on a ball in space. That's like the whole thing. I have a very interesting question. Is the Great Attractor connected to the Big Bang? No, the Great Attractor is almost certainly just a big bunch of galaxies. Do all supernovas turn into black holes? No, not all of them. Many of them turn into neutron stars. Potent skills with the $2. Thanks a lot. I appreciate you. Is infinite regress possible? Seems like it is. At least in physics, there's no issue with that. Why does fusion beyond iron cost energy? So it's essentially just like the tipping point, right? I mean, the laws of physics, I suppose, could have been such that fusing any atom gives you energy. But it just like it just works out that on balance, the way that the forces interact. So like heavy atoms want to fly apart more than they want to be held together. So like if you can trigger them to fly apart, they'll fly apart faster. It doesn't cost energy to make them fly apart. It gives you energy. And that's roughly because like the nuclear force is only so strong, and it drops off in strength very, very quickly with distance. So big atoms with big nuclei, they have lots of protons that are pushing away from each other, and so they kind of want to be further apart from each other. That just takes a little bit of a kick, and so it just happens to be that it costs energy to fuse them, because to get them closer is the opposite of letting them split apart. Why are there not more atoms kinds in the periodic table? Well, there's an atom for every possible number of protons that you can have, except the ones that have like a billion protons. Like we just don't think that those are atoms because they don't form stable nuclei. So why do you think the constants of nature are so perfect? Isn't it most likely that there are many universes with different values? Well, I don't know if they are perfect. Like, I don't think that the constants of nature that we have right now are like the final constants of nature. And it doesn't even seem plausible to me that like these are the best possible constants for humans or for life. Like, I don't know. How do they know if they're close or not? Like the nuclei? Well, they feel forces from each other, right? Just think how many people would love to be buried on the moon. Billionaires could support the space. Yeah, billionaires are supporting the space, like the space industry. What do you think? Who do you think, like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk are? Would I ever be able to ask about polymer chemistry and physics here? Probably not, because I don't know anything about it. I mean, you could ask, but I wouldn't answer. If I wanted to major in chemistry, is calculus mastery essential? Probably, yeah. Cognitive light cones. Okay, maybe that seems real, but it seems like psychology stuff, not like physics stuff. Is time explainable? Yeah, I'm aware that light cones are Einstein things. Why didn't we detect a quark star before? Well, we just don't know if they exist. Is it possible that alternate matter could be superposed in our universe at a different frequency? I don't know what that question means. Frequencies is not like some fundamental thing with physics, so I would try to kind of like get that out of the way that you think about things. Would being buried on the moon preserve your body? I guess you'd dry out, but other than that, yeah. Can lab-scale black hole models show quantum effects like Hawking radiation? If they could make lab-scale black holes, yeah. Now, they have made lab-scale sonic black holes, or sonic holes, or dumb holes, if you will. And yes, they do show the quantum effects like Hawking radiation. Is the universe fundamentally information-based? That's a great question. Some people think that, yeah. Um, I know it's simple, but can you explain entropy? Entropy, roughly speaking, is just a measure. It's just a measure of the number of different ways that a system could be arranged microscopically without changing its macroscopic properties. So if you have a system that's high entropy, you could shuffle around all of the internal microscopic components, and it would still look the same from a macroscopic view. Could time emerge from motion or field change rather than entropy? Well, maybe. I'm hungry. I should eat. What are sonic black holes? What you just mentioned. I made a video on them, but they're essentially black holes but for sound. And they've been made in a lab. Is the origin of the universe infinite regress? Maybe, but then it wouldn't have an origin. How can the speed of time from special relativity be properly compared without an additional reference time? I don't know what you mean by... So what you can do is you can compare clocks, and you can say that one person's clock is ticking at a different rate than another person's clock. Why don't virtual particles actually exist? They're math tricks, and they kind of by definition don't obey, like they don't obey the properties. They don't have the properties required to be particles, which means that really it's just a way of decomposing a field. A field isn't a particle. Particles arise in fields, but the virtual particles are just ways of kind of like chunking up field configurations into things that kind of look like particles. But it's just like an abstraction. It's not like a real thing. Do we have more local observations of dark matter? No, not really. What do you think of Bob Lazar's element 115? Well, it's not Bob Lazar's. Bob Lazar is a hack who doesn't know anything about element 115. So anything slower than the speed of sound can't exit. Right. Do you ever think about the arrow of time? Yes, I do. I do a lot. You should eat. Yeah, no, I have some sunflower seeds. I'm going to eat them later. Can light bend around corners? Yeah, it's called diffraction. I feel like pilot quantum doesn't seem coherent absent superposition. Pilot quantum? I prefer the many worlds interpretation. That's my preferred interpretation of quantum mechanics. Was it real where they knock some atoms from an element and this converts it to another element? Yeah, absolutely. What kind of physicist are you? I do relativity. Some cosmology. I do also just some pure mathematics. So you might call me a mathematical physicist. I do any physics that involves geometry, basically, is what I try to do. From Garba Gaiman with the 10 Canuck bucks. Could the A theory of time and relativity be resolved by stretching out the time experienced in a slower reference frame to match the faster reference frame if time is infinitely divisible? Well, the point is that the nows just don't coincide. Right? Like what you think of as now and what so Ian actually gets this wrong quite frequently. So shout out to Ian, but he gets it wrong. They get it wrong. It has nothing to do with time dilation. It has to do with relativity of simultaneity. So what happens is that if you and I are at the same place but moving at different speeds, what I consider now my instant, the slice of space-time through which I consider to be simultaneous with me, will be a different slice of space-time, will be different from the slice of space-time that you consider to be simultaneous relative to you, because you're moving at different speeds. That's the issue. And so whose now is the real now? That's like if A theory is true, then there is a universal now. And if there's a universal now, then how can you have how can two people disagree on what now is? What kind of mathematics do you do? I do differential geometry. What should I do to get better at solving physics problems? Practice. Unfortunately, that's the hard answer, but it's practice. The Earth is flat, and anyone who finds evidence for that is killed by the government. That's hilarious, but okay, go off, King. What's your favorite preparation of eggs? If they're seasoned right scrambled, otherwise probably over medium. What do physicists think about free will? Generally, we don't think about it. If you ask a working physicist often who doesn't dabble in philosophy, they don't think about it. But physicists who do dabble in philosophy are generally like, yeah, free will's not a thing. What is the meaning of life? I don't know. Should I bring up another guest? No, I don't think I will. I think I'm just going to answer some questions. How do you stay so positive? I don't know. I just am that way. What's the diagram behind me? This is a Feynman diagram. It's modeling electron-electron repulsion or electron scattering. Jay with the $5 asks, thank you, by the way, Jay. I can understand how non-locality is possible in Everett and Bohm, But how is it even possible in GRW? What does entanglement even mean in GRW? Do you mean GZW? Or I always get the letters wrong. Okay, no, it's GRW. Yeah, so in GRW, so GRW is one where you have spontaneous collapse, right? And where each particle in a wave function has a probability of collapsing. So I guess the point is that essentially, and I'd have to refamiliarize myself with GRW, but I guess the point is that essentially every moment of time you have a probability of some projection operator acting on your wave function. And that probability depends on how many particles make up your wave function. And so in particular, entanglement, like entanglement collapse would just happen instantaneously, right? It must happen instantaneously in like a non-local way, because if the projection operator acts on the wave function, it's going to collapse the whole thing. But I can look into it more deeply if you want. It's an interesting question, and I'd have to read a little bit more to make sure that that's a true answer. But that's what my intuition tells me about GRW. Pulling out the book. This book? How does the diagram work behind you? Yeah, so you have electron and you have two electrons coming in. They exchange some virtual stuff. Stuff happens in the middle, and they both go their own separate way. Is time ever treated as an emergent coordinate in differential geometry? Not in differential geometry, but that's because not usually, no. Do physicists make good money generally? Physicists are generally a middle class crowd. Since physics doesn't prove or disprove a god, why wouldn't you be agnostic? There are other reasons besides physics. Is there an accepted reason for why there's 3 generations of particles? No. There's an accepted reason why there's at least 3, but there's no reason why there's not 4. Does quantum measurement and wave function collapse arise from deeper mechanisms? Maybe. Oh, my stomach just grumbled. What is the most common shape of most electromagnetic fields? Is it a sphere? It's probably a dipole. Because tends to be the case that things find their positive charges find their negative charges. So you'd get a dipole thing, which is like it's just called a dipole field. Is it weird magnitude of charge of quarks with size exactly thirds of charge of electrons point size? No, I mean that's like it's a little weird, but it's not so weird. Like it's kind of what you expect if charge is indeed quantized, which it seems to be. You were on a live stream with 3 others. What channel was that? With 2 others. I was on a live stream. We host a like a call-in show. Myself, Ian, allegedly Ian, and Deconstruction Zone Justin. We host a call-in show every Sunday at 9. It's on the channel Unapologetic. Let me pull it up, just so I can link it in the chat. It's actually at Unapologetic Live. There it is. So there's your answer. Does differential geometry allow for folded manifolds locally connected but causally layered? Not. So there generally isn't causality if you're doing like Euclidean geometry or Euclidean signature geometry. Generally, if manifolds are self-intersecting, then it's not a manifold, right? It doesn't have a manifold structure. Add Forrest Valkai to the host. I reached out to him. He didn't get back to me, so he's a busy guy. Which theoretical particle do you think is most likely to exist and why? Maybe a WIMP, which is a weakly interacting massive particle. You wouldn't know the job prospects for getting a physics master's and finding work as a physicist in Europe. You won't find much work as a physicist with just a master's. You'll generally need a PhD in order to find work, regardless of where you are. Although, okay, no, if you go to some, like, you could, with a master's in physics, you could probably go teach at a university in, less well-off countries. Like I was looking in Cambodia at the Cambodia National Academy or National University, and a lot of their physics professors just have bachelors and masters. I think one of them has a PhD. And, that's because they're still reeling from their civil war and genocide, so. Are you endorsers for papers on archive under Astro. I can endorse, but I won't endorse. unless I know the person. Couldn't the self-intersecting manifold be a variety? Yeah. But it won't have a manifold structure, right? Because it won't be locally Euclidean if it's self-intersecting. In Lorentzian geometry, can a causal boundary exist without a curvature singularity? Well, yeah, sure. Well, okay, so to be clear, depends on what you mean by, you said a curvature singularity. Yeah, sure, you can just lop off your spacetime and just put a causal boundary. It doesn't have to, I mean, like there's no reason why you can't have that. It just might not be like natural. How exactly does spacetime emerge from entanglement? We don't know. We don't know. We don't know how it works. We don't even know if it's true. Width of localized wave function, 10 to the minus 5 centimeters, 10 to the minus 16 probability of collapse per second. Ah, there it is. Would you be willing to give up your position to a marginalized person of color, or are you MAGA? Give up my position? What does that mean? Like, so currently I'm unemployed, so there's no position to give up. Do you mean like give up my position on TikTok? Like just give it to some random person? Why would I give up the stuff that I do to some random person? Like then I would be in a bad, like what kind of a question is that? Like I think that generally, like what? I mean, I'm currently unemployed, hoping to get a job in this fall, but what a weird question. Are you applying to more postdocs? Yeah, the postdoc cycle ended, so I'll be applying for more in a few months. I'm still applying for positions, but they come up a lot more sparsely now. Could I interview you for a YouTube video you're working on? Sure. I have an email that, like, you can send me a message on my Linktree bio, just like a form that you can fill out, so do that. Could you give a little insight on the recent claim of now having achieved teleportation of data through entangled particles? Yeah, so quantum teleportation is a thing, but it's not faster than light. So essentially what you do is you take a quantum system that you'd like to teleport, you entangle it in a special way with another quantum system, do something to that quantum system that makes the other, so you take quantum system A, entangle it with B, and now you do something with, and then you take B and entangle it with C, take C and entangle it with D, the location where you'd like it to teleport, and there's a series of measurements that you kind of do along the way, or a series of like manipulations, and that takes the information from A and brings it over to D. And I do have a video on this from a while ago, it's actually not even that long ago, but yeah, you should check it out, where I go over the specific details of what kind of measurements are involved. The question about the BGV theorem. You mean the BGV conjecture? Yeah, what about it? I'm hungry. At what point in your physics degree did you have to learn topology? Never. Literally never. Wasn't part of my physics degree at all. What determines the landscape of string vacua? So basically it has to do with winding numbers. So the number of ways that the strings can wrap around the tiny dimensions. Is the electron made of 3 charges of a third quanta? Not necessarily. Did you take physical chemistry? No, I did not. What alternative to lambda CDM could explain cosmic acceleration? I'm sure there are plenty, I just don't know any off the top of my head. Is this YouTube stream going to be saved? Of course it will be. What happens if we find out the graviton exists? What will we be able to do? Well, then we'll hopefully be able to make some sense of quantum gravity. What's your arrangement against reparations? I don't know what that question means. My arrangement? Generally pro reparations. Where do you go to university? I'm not a student. Oh god, I'm so hungry. If you can lop off spacetime causally, could you define multiple such regions interacting only via horizon surfaces? Yeah, that's a thing. What were your grades like throughout high school? I had a 4.0. I got A's. If energy is equal to wavelength or frequency, are the particles just other octaves in the field? Energy is not equal to wavelength or frequency. They're related, but they're not the same. How could photons have momentum if they're massless? They do. Momentum is not just mass times speed. That's the point. That's what it is at low speeds for massive particles, but that's just not what it is in general. For CERN, what would be the most terrifying fact that it could reveal? Nothing really. There's nothing really terrifying that they could do. Do you think we will get a superconducting material like LK99 but real? Maybe. But I suspect not for a while. Well, actually, no. This is impossible to predict. Maybe it's tomorrow. How many people are getting paid by this website? You mean TikTok? TikTok pays creators, yeah. Like decently well. That's how I'm able to like, afford groceries and stuff right now, because even though I don't have like a research position, because I just finished my old contract, I'm still making some decent money from TikTok, like a few $1,000s a month. Is there a UV complete theory of quantum gravity that reduces both GR and QFT? No, there's not. Does the BGV theorem prove a finite universe? No, it does not. Do 600k white Union soldiers get reparations? What? Can time go backwards if you go above the speed of light like tachyons? Well, you can't go above the speed of light. And what is the case is that if you can move in a space-like way rather than a time-like way, then you can go back in time, yeah. Is it hard to be a working physicist? I mean, in a sense, yes, and in a sense, no. Like, yes, in that it's hard to get a job. No, in that, like, once you get a job, it's not like a hard job, because you do it because you love it. So, like, why would you... I don't know. It's hard to say that it's hard. It's definitely, like, mentally challenging, but that's, like, the fun part, right? Oh, sorry. Get a haircut and a real job? Well, so I literally just finished a contract at a university, which is a real job. And why would I get a haircut? Also, like, you seem upset. Don't be. Be chill. Who pays? Somebody asked. Somebody asked who pays. Is it who pays physicists or something like that? Oh, who pays you guys for doing physics? Usually it's universities. Sometimes there are government grants as well, especially if the physics that you're doing has like applications for like military or energy production or something like that. Why don't we have free energy? There is no free energy. It's just not a thing that you can make. What does for do for as opposed to for as done? Can you apply for a job with Elon Musk? I'd rather not. Why or why not could God complete the theory of everything since it's called theoretical physics? If you have a mathematical model that involves a God and resolves the quantum gravity question, completes the theory of everything, then by all means. But in physics, we come up with mathematical models and we test those. Are you a quantum physicist? Not really. I do relativity stuff. I dabble in quantum stuff though sometimes. Can bulk boundary duality be derived from axiomatic principles? People are trying to, but it's very unclear that that's possible. Darth Dawkins obliterated Dr. Blitz. Really? Really, did he? Did you watch the... Oh, wait, Catholic traditionalist. You're the person who... you were on my live the other day, weren't you? Oh, yeah, you were the super anti-science guy. You just, like, hate science and hate progress. That checks out, Catholic traditionalist. What about what Nikola Tesla was working on? He was working on stuff that wasn't going to work, so... A first-year student majoring in physics, I wanted help in how to choose your field and when to decide you got it down. So I had a feeling that I wanted to do stuff with black holes and like, cosmology and relativity, but also maybe like quantum field theory as an undergrad. But like, you don't really have to choose a field as an undergrad. The classes are basically all the same. If you go to grad school, you will. But the way I ended up choosing my field was basically by choosing the advisor, and then I just did whatever they did. Does spin create gravity? Could the spin of the galaxy be affected by black hole spin? Yeah, but not very much, because the black hole just doesn't contribute very much to the actual like total mass of the galaxy. How long will it take to achieve stable fusion for a viable time? Nobody can predict that. Is the emergence of Lorentzian time in Hartle-Hawking no boundary proposal similar to an instaton in Euclidean geometry? Yeah, kinda. How long will it take to achieve stable fusion for a viable time? Oh, I already answered that. Have you come across Wojciech-Zurek theories on quantum Darwinism? I haven't. Oh, what university did you do your PhD and postdoc? I'm not telling you. That would dox me. What haven't we figured out about gravity? Lots. Like, for example, we don't know what's going on inside a black hole. Big crunch or big rip? I kind of lean towards Big Crunch. That's a project I'm working on right now. But who knows? Physicist, science, whatever, they are just trying to keep up with God. Okay. Whatever you say, whatever you say, bud. Why do trillions of neutrinos pass through our body at any time? Well, because they come from the sun. The sun emits a bunch of neutrinos, and they just pass through our bodies and the entire Earth. Almost every single neutrino that hits the Earth passes through completely unscathed and completely unnoticed. Can you explain how wave functions move as probability waves? I don't know what you mean by move. So they are probability waves, but they fill space. That's what it means for it to be a wave. It's a wave in a field, and that field fills space. And so the excitation in the field can move around. And that just happens as a result of Hamiltonian evolution. Bohmian mechanics or many worlds interpretation? I prefer many worlds. What subject did you write about to complete your PhD thesis? I wrote about conformal hypersurface geometry. From Fear's Interaction. With the $20, thank you so much, so generous. If you were a cat in a box with a device inside that could kill you, is the researcher outside the box a prick, not a prick, a superposition of both states? Love your lives, go get lunch. Definitely a prick. If they put me in there with poison, I don't care if they're, I don't care what their intent is, they're a prick. Do you believe the observable universe is bigger than the actual universe? No, the actual universe is bigger than the observable universe. What is your research area, topic, interests? So I do, so on the physics side, I do like theoretical stuff on gravity and like a tidbit of like quantum gravity, like a tidbit of that kind of stuff. But like, you know, cosmology, black holes, that kind of thing. Like I'm going to be submitting a paper maybe today on like asymptotically Curtis Sitter black holes. And then on the math side, I do stuff that are like, that's like pure differential geometry. So if it has to do with geometry, especially like Lorentzian or if it has to do with Riemannian geometry, then I'm interested. We just got a 15-month subscriber, Carbon Handprint. Thank you so much. Why do you refuse to fight? Oh. What do you think about the beginning of the universe? I'm not sure if there was a beginning. What's a graviton particle? Well, it's a hypothetical fundamental particle or fundamental unit of gravity. That's the whole thing. We just don't know if it exists. Why does the holographic principle allow for a globe Earth to be projected from a flat Earth image? It doesn't. The holographic principle doesn't allow for that. Big Bang Theory, did you enjoy the TV show or was it full of too many? No, I enjoyed the TV show, at least the first few seasons. Eventually it just became a normal sitcom. And I guess it was still fine, but like if you watch it without a laugh track, it's very, very weird. Do you have to do a master's and then a PhD, or can you go straight for a PhD? Most people will go straight for a PhD, and then they'll just give you a master's along the way. Can you explain the Mpemba effect? No. What's the consensus on the beginning of the universe? There isn't one. What types of groups do you often think about? I mean, generally just different signature special orthogonal groups. But I promised myself this summer I'm going to get deeper into the Riemannian geometry of special unitary groups, so that I can do some quantum computing stuff. How can we have gravity in spacefaring ships? Accelerate or decelerate, or have them spin. That's about it. Do physicists have a definition of infinity? Well, we take the mathematician's definition of infinity, which is just a property of a thing that is larger than any natural number. Gotta drink some water. Is tuition still waived for PhD candidates? At least it was when I graduated, when I finished my PhD a few years ago. I don't know. I imagine, I would hope so. Did you take OChem? No, I did not. What's your take on terraforming Mars? We should fix Earth before we terraform Mars. What's the beryllium 8 bottleneck? I don't know. I've never heard of that. What's poppin'? Your thoughts on Faraday's paradox? I don't know what the Faraday's paradox is. Let's look it up. Oh, it doesn't have a Wikipedia page. That's strange. If it's, I don't know how well known it is. I'll have to look into it. Maybe I'll make a video about it at some point. How can gravity be seen? Oh, how can gravity be seen three different ways? Curved spacetime, force, or exchange of graviton particle. Well, they would all be the same thing. They're all just different ways of representing the same thing. A force is just a Newtonian way of viewing curved spacetime, and it's possible that a graviton is just a kind of quantum way of viewing curved spacetime. Isn't that the climate guy and now a physicist, tomorrow a priest? So I am a physicist, but I can still talk about climate science. I never claimed to be a climatologist. Never claimed to be a climate scientist, right? Like, that's never my claim. I've always claimed to be a physicist. Potent skills with the $20. Thank you so much. Could time behave like a wave function? If Einstein's theory implied that past, present, future all exist at the same time, not at the same time, they're just all equally real. Maybe our experience of time is our consciousness collapsing the wave function experiencing one moment. So I don't think that consciousness is a thing that collapses the wave function. That's not like a generally accepted thing either. So, I mean, yeah, it's the better way to think about it is that our consciousness is a series of events that take place in space-time. And so every series of every event takes place at some point in space-time. And so that particular moment in space-time, that particular event in space-time, will correspond to a conscious experience. And the reason it runs forward instead of back is because it seems like entropy can form, or it seems like lower entropy is more, lower entropy gives rise to memory more effectively than higher entropy does. So hence why we remember the past. Could quantum entanglement really be micro wormholes between particles? That's an idea. I don't know how convinced I am of it, though. Is the universe shaped like a sphere or a flat plane? Well, it's three-dimensional, right? At least, spatially. The data that we have is consistent with both, but it's more consistent with being a flat three-dimensional plane. Or a flat three-dimensional volume, I should say. How can we stop people from abusing the word quantum? I don't know. Beat them over the head or something? No, don't do that. What is physics' most recent proven discovery? Just go read the most recent experimental physics paper. Why are we not taught Newton's first law correctly? You are. Maybe you weren't, but I was. Did you choose your advisor for your dissertation based on your interests, or were you assigned? I chose them. So what happened was when I was in grad school, I started working with one professor, and we didn't get along. So she ended up dropping me. I mean, we got along kind of, but like, you know, she had different ideas. I was supposed to be her first student, and she had different ideas of what she wanted a student to do, and that didn't work for me. So she ended up dropping me. And so she said that, hey, there's a bunch of other people at the university who are doing similar things. So she gave me a list of names, basically. Said, hey, go talk to them and see if you know, any of these people sound interesting to you. And so I did that. And then one of the ones I ended up talking to was the person I ended up working with, because we got along really well and their work seemed interesting. So it was a choice, yeah. Well, is the final answer. I think Albert Einstein saying gravity as a texture of the universe is a wrong idea. I don't know if he's used that language. Are we allowed to ask about PhD route? Yeah, I went from undergrad for 4 years, then 2 years of a master's program, then 2 years doing my classes for my master's, and then 5 years for a PhD. It's pretty normal. A little bit on the long side, but pretty normal. Gravity is something that attracts you to some kind of a force, but nobody knows what. I mean, like, the way that we model gravity is as curvature of spacetime. How much of what we see published about quantum is real and not just hype for funding? If you see it published in a journal, it's almost certainly real. If you see it published, like, in a magazine, then maybe it's hype. Can you explain spin? Yeah, so spin is just angular momentum and quantized. That's all it is. Dropped out of a PhD program in the past year. PI was not a match since he's always absent. Thank you for the glowing jellyfish, Dang Compy. PI was not a match since he was always absent. Not sure I explained it to other programs. That's tough. Like, that's really tough, because the thing is there's so many people applying and so few spots that most people just, if they see something that looks off, they just won't bring you on. So that's tough. Like, that's a tough situation to be in. I mean, you could email them and be like, hey, I know this looks weird. I know it looks weird that I dropped out, but here's why. And just kind of explain what's going on. Could gravity link causally disconnected spacetime regions via shared horizons? Well, look, if they share a horizon, then they can be causally connected. I don't see what the issue is. What do you... why is everyone so hyped about gravitons currently in my education? We just have barely covered them. I don't know. They shouldn't be. Gravitons are... Like, people are not looking for gravitons. Right? We don't have the tools to look for them. Thank you for the corgi butt, Dang. I appreciate you. Have you met Ian, Justin, or other TikTok thinkers? I mean, I co-host a show with Ian and Justin once a week. But I haven't met them in person. No, because for the longest time I was living in Europe. Although now that I'm back in the US, I might go, at some point I might visit people. Um, all right, y'all. I think I'm gonna end the live here because I'm very hungry, and it's been an hour and a half, and I usually do these for an hour and a half. So thank you guys all for being here. I may or may not be live tomorrow. I might do this again tomorrow because tomorrow's Wednesday, and that's when I usually do it. And so I'll see you then. Take care, everybody. Thanks for being here.